I came to Congress the same day that Nancy Pelosi became Speaker of the House. So you talk about mixed feelings about things. I very much felt conflicted that day. But more importantly, what I was able to observe when Pelosi was Speaker, when Harry Reid was the majority leader of the Senate, when they began an agenda when Barack Obama obviously won the presidency 2 years later. And what was interesting was they wasted no time in moving forward with one of the most aggressive agendas that we've seen in a long time. And there was this effort that was underway. You know, they make these claims of, well, we reached out, we tried to get Republican input on the health care bill, but that was all a false claim. It was all a bunch of nonsense. There were 36 amendments that Republicans offered in the Ways and Means Committee to try and improve or do all sorts of things to Obamacare. Every single one of those was swatted away on a partisan roll call. They ended up moving the bill through the Senate, as we know, when before Scott Brown won his election. They jammed it through the House on a partisan basis with no input whatsoever. And it was signed into law. And it was signed into law with the false claim of a president of the United States who looked into the eyes of the American people and he said something that was not true. He said, if you like your current plan, you get to keep it, period. If you like your doctor, you get to keep it, period. He didn't qualify it. He didn't say, well, we're going to do this or that or the other thing. There was no parentheses. There were no semicolons. He said, you get to keep it. And that now we all know, we knew it then, but we know it now, that is nonsense. That is complete nonsense. Now, here's what happened. And I think you and I are in the midst of seeing something that the political left is very, very concerned about. What they're concerned about is that normal people who are normally minding their own business become awakened to what's happening in Washington. What liberals are doing is they're counting on people being overwhelmed and discouraged and busy and just like, no, it's all fine, it's all good, you don't have to worry about what's going on here. But there is something that happened during that particular Congress when they jammed Obamacare through and when they turned on the spigot of federal spending with that stimulus package. It's like they turned the faucet on and they just walked away, and they spent $1 trillion in the twinkling of an eye. And here's what happened. They woke you up. They woke many people up. They woke candidates up all across the country. There are members of the House of Representatives. Joe Walsh, my colleague, was provoked into running for Congress at that point. Member of Congress after member of Congress after member of Congress who came in the class of 2010, and these people were literally minding their own business until they looked up and they were provoked into running by Obamacare and the stimulus, and they said, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go to Washington to try and change this. So the class of 2010 and the class of 2012 came over the hilltop in incredible force and incredible presence to try and change this dynamic. And what they did was they became a restraining influence for all the legislative nonsense that the Obama administration wanted to do. They wanted to move forward with a national energy tax known as cap and trade. The new majority stopped that. They wanted to move forward with all the crazy union stuff. The new majority stopped that. They wanted to move forward with new stimulus spending. They wanted to move forward and go even further as it relates to Obamacare, if you can even believe it, and the new majority stopped that. But the frustration that you feel and that I feel is that we are up against opponents who are very sophisticated, and we need to learn the sophistication of our opponents. What they are trying to do is to make us feel overwhelmed. And what we've got to do is make sure we don't feel overwhelmed. Now, here's the thing. In politics, and particularly in politics where there is gridlock, whoever is defending the status quo has an advantage. So in other words, the founders created a system where it's very difficult to get things done. right? The only way that they were able to move through Obamacare was because they had both the House and the Senate and the White House. And as my predecessor Henry Hyde used to say, there is actually one thing worse than gridlock. The worst thing than gridlock is the greased chute of government. When they don't even read the bills. When Nancy Pelosi said, we've got to pass this so you can know what's in it, she wasn't kidding. She had no idea what she was voting for, and neither did her members. But what they have completely underestimated is the provocation of their action. So now we are in an incredible conflict right now. And we're in an incredible conflict where we all need to stay together as conservatives, and we need to be smart and savvy and sophisticated and patient and wise as we take on our opponents. I want to turn to two particular historic admonitions and draw your attention to them. Write them down, go home and Google them and think about them and give me some feedback. Here's the first one. We get tempted, those of you who are people of faith, know that Scripture tells us that we are supposed to be in the world but not of the world. So if we're in the world and not of the world, that means that we need techniques, or said another way in Scripture, be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. So that means we need to use these techniques. We need to be sophisticated in how we're doing things, but we need to know what we're really all about. We can't get caught up in other sorts of activities. Thomas Jefferson had a word for just that thing. And let me give you a few sentences that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1790. This is obviously the author of the Declaration of Independence, and he was writing to a friend about these general themes, and he said this: "The ground of liberty is to be gained by inches. We must be contented to secure what we can get from time to time, and eternally press forward for what is yet to get. It takes time to persuade men to do even what is for their own good." Thomas Jefferson, 1790. In other words, Jefferson, the architect, the author of the Declaration of Independence, understood the big totality of history. He understood the scope of what was going on. But Jefferson, as an architect of the ultimate strategies, said you've got to go after these incremental wins. You've got to take these things, stay together, go back, fight for the other day. Alexander Hamilton, and I won't quote it, but Alexander Hamilton wrote in Federalist 85 that exact same thing. In other words, why would you ever, Hamilton is answering this question, why would you ever vote for something that's not perfect? And Hamilton lays out that exact example. Now here's the thing. Our opponents want us to be overwhelmed. Our opponents want us to feel confused. Our opponents want us to feel discouraged. And our opponents want us to feel as if the onslaught of collectivism is just here and there's nothing that we can do and we just need to yield to it. But you know what, friends? Our opponents have completely underestimated us, I think. Our opponents have no sense that what we are is a group of people that is standing up for the founding of this country. And yeah, we may have quarrels and disagreements about this or that or the other thing in terms of techniques or tactics, but at its core, what deeply resonates with us and what we're inviting others to do is to hearken back to a heritage that has made the United States the envy of the world. And I know that you and I refuse to be defensive about a value system that has created more prosperity and more opportunity than the world has ever seen. There is no system that is the rival of the United States of America. There is no system that can hold a candle to individual liberty. People understand who they are as beneficiaries of freedom, which is a gift from God, not a gift from government. And it is a gift from God that we're held accountable for. And ultimately what happens as a result of a free people bound together by these founding documents: prosperity, opportunity, safety, all these things that we want for our children, and we want them not only as a legacy, but we've got a responsibility because we are the beneficiaries of work that has gone on before us. So I don't care how big these swells seem. I don't care how much out to sea we feel every once in a while. I'm telling you what, we have been entrusted with something, and we know the value of the heritage that we've been entrusted with. This is not some situation where we're thinking, oh, wow, I had no idea what it meant to be a free American. No. We know what freedom is all about. And so the question is, what do we do with that freedom? And I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I know I am preaching, but I know I'm preaching to the choir, but every once in a while, the choir needs a word. And here's the word. I want to give you, in closing, just this one observation that I had. I serve on the House Ways and Means Committee. The Ways and Means Committee, as you remember, is involved in taxes and so forth and oversees the IRS. What a joy. We had the ongoing investigation into the IRS targeting scandal. We had a series of witnesses who came in to tell their story. There were 6 witnesses who came before the Ways and Means Committee, and they inspired me. And I am not easily inspired. I hear a lot of witnesses. I see a lot of stuff. I read a lot of things. You know, don't we all? You hear stories from time to time, and it gets to be, well, there's this somebody else talking in a microphone. But there were 6 people who were ordinary citizens who were before the Ways and Means Committee, and they were conservatives, and they told their stories about how the Internal Revenue Service targeted them based on how they view the world and based on their political philosophy and based on their religion. Now, these were regular folks. There was an Iowa Right to Life representative there. This woman, and I almost wouldn't have believed it, except I saw the documents with my own eyes. The Internal Revenue Service made written interrogatory inquiries to her before they were going to get their 501c4 status, and they said, "Tell us about your prayers." Can you imagine that? Does that cause a shudder through you like it does through me? Tell us about your prayers. What do you pray? What are those things all about, those prayer meetings that you have? So you have 6 witnesses. And these witnesses were people who it would have been easy for them to do what? To be overwhelmed, to be discouraged, to say, you know what, let's just sign the thing, you know what I mean? Just get it done with. Let's get our 501c4 status. But as I described them, this was a group of people who kept faith with their country when they didn't think that their country was keeping faith with them. Now, you know what? Those are patriots. Those are people who are faithful to an understanding of who we are as Americans. When they thought their country had abandoned them, when their government literally had turned on them and had targeted them, they didn't give up. They didn't go away. They didn't let themselves feel overwhelmed and discouraged. You know what they did? They hung on. And they said, I know my country is going to come over the hilltop and rescue me. And you know what? Their country is. It's changing. So I want to encourage you today. And I want to make you understand that I know, and I know you know, the stakes of what we're dealing with. If we squander right now, if this generation, us, if we squander the freedom that has been entrusted to us, there's nobody else to come over the hilltop. We're it. And we've got a responsibility. So we've got a responsibility not just to be in our own echo chamber and just talking to one another. I like talking to people that agree with me all the time. I love that. But that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to go out and to be contagious, positively, and invite new people. Because the folks that are feeling overwhelmed and discouraged, they want to know that there's a better way. So let me really close by saying this. There's a great line, and it was a quote from St. Ambrose from the 4th century. He obviously was describing his own faith when he was describing this, but we can apply this for today, and that is this. We don't impose on the world, we propose a more excellent way. The way of the left is fraught with turmoil and disappointment and false claims and misrepresentations and hopes that vanish. The way that we are articulating is to say, look, have a high view of the individual, have a high view of family, respect private property rights, have the United States play a strong role in the world. And then this can be an example of freedom and opportunity that is not just ours to enjoy, but we'll be the beneficiaries of it. But we will also know that when it's all said and done, that this generation will have done right by our children and our grandchildren. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you today for coming out. I want to thank you today for being a part of this. I want to thank you today for not just sitting around at home and barking at the TV, but for your willingness to engage substantively, because what the political left has done is they have underestimated you and they have underestimated me. Thank you, and God be with you.